John I, Margrave of Brandenburg, was from 1220 until his death Margrave of Brandenburg, jointly with his brother Otto III the Pious. The reign of these two Ascanian Margraves was characterized by an expansion of the Margraviate, which annexed the remaining parts of Teltow and Barnim, the Uckermark, the Lordship of Stargard, the Lubusz Land and parts of the Neumark east of the Oder. They consolidated the position of Brandenburg within the Holy Roman Empire, which was reflected in the fact that in 1256, Otto III was a candidate to be elected king of the Germans. They founded several cities and developed the twin cities of Cölln and Berlin. They expanded the Ascanian castle in nearby Spandau and made it the preferred residence. Before their death, they divided the Margraviate in a Johannine and an Ottonian part. The Ascanians were traditionally buried in the Lehnen Abbey in the Ottonian part of the country. In 1258, they founded a Cistercian monastery named Mariense, where members of the Johannine line could be buried. In 1266, they changed their mind and founded a second monastery, named Cölln, 8 kilometers southwest of Mariense. John was initially buried at Mariense. His body was moved to Cölln in 1273. After the Ottonian line died out in 1317, John I's grandson Valdemar reunited the Margraviate. Life, Regency and Guardianship. John was the elder son of Albert II of the Brandenburg line of the House of Ascania, and Mechthild, the daughter of Margrave Conrad II of Lusatia, a junior line of the House of Wettin. Since both John and his 2 years younger brother Otto III were minors when the father died in 1220, Emperor Frederick II transferred the regency to Archbishop Albert I of Magdeburg. The guardianship was taken up by the children's first cousin once removed, Count Henry I of Anhalt, the older brother of Duke Albert I of Saxony, a cousin of Albert II. Is the sons of Duke Bernhard III of Saxony. They were the closest relatives, and Henry had the elder rights. In 1221, the mother, Countess Matilda, purchased the regency from the Archbishop of Magdeburg for 1900 silver marks and then ruled jointly with Henry I. The Archbishop of Magdeburg then traveled to Italy to visit Emperor Frederick II, and Duke Albert I of Saxony attempted to grab power in Brandenburg, causing a rift with his brother Henry I. The Saxon attack presented an opportunity for Count Palatine Henry V to get involved. Emperor Frederick II managed to prevent a feud, urging them to keep the peace. After Matilda died in 1225, the brothers ruled the Margraviate of Brandenburg jointly. John I was about 12 years old at the time, and Otto III was 10. They were knighted on the 11th of May 1231 in Brandenburg and Der Havel, and this is generally taken as the beginning of the reign. Domestic policies. After the death of Count Henry of Brunswick-Luneburg in 1227, the brothers supported his nephew, the brother-in-law Otto the Child, who was only able to prevail against Hohenstaufen claims and its vassals by force of arms. In 1229, there was a feud with former regent Archbishop Albert, which ended peacefully. Like their former opponents and defenders, they appeared at the Diet of Mainz in 1235, where the public peace of Mainz was proclaimed. After the dispute over the kingship between Conrad IV and Henry Raspe, the brothers recognized William II of Holland as king in 1251. They first exercised Brandenburg's electoral privilege in 1257. when they voted for King Alfonso X of Castile. Although Alfonso was not elected, the fact that they were able to vote illustrates the growing importance of Brandenburg, which had been founded only a century earlier in 1157 by Albert the Bear. When John and Otto came to power, Brandenburg was considered an insignificant little principality on the eastern border. By the 1230s, the Margraves of Brandenburg had definitely gained the heritable post of imperial chamberlain and the indisputable right to vote in the election of the King of the Germans. Developing the country, John I and his brother Otto III developed the territory of the Margraviate and expanded market towns and castles, including Spandau, Cölln and Prenzlau, into towns and centers of commerce. They also expanded Frankfurt and their Oder, and John I awarded it city status in 1253. The Teltow War and the Treaty of Land in between 1230 and 1245, Brandenburg acquired the remaining part of Barnim and the southern Uckermark up to the Welsh River. On the 20th of June 1236, the Margraviate acquired the lordships of Stargard, Descendants and Worcester by the Treaty of Kremen from Duke Wartislaw III of Pomerania. Later that year, the brothers initiated the construction of Stargard Castle to secure the northernmost part of the territory. From 1239 to 1245, the brothers fought the Teltow War against the Margraves of Meissen of the House of Wettin. At stake was a Slavic castle at Köpenick, a former headquarters of the Spruinen tribe, located at the confluence of the Spree and Arma rivers. At the time, it was just east of Berlin. Today it is part of the city. It dominated the Barnim and Teltow areas. In 1245, the brothers managed to take both Castle at Köpenick and a fortress at Mittenwalde. For this base, they could expand further to the east. In 1249, they acquired the Lubusz Land and reached the river Oder. In 1250, the brothers closed the Treaty of Land with the Dukes of Pomerania. Under this treaty, they received the northern part of the Uckermark north of the Welsh River and the districts of Randau and Löcknitz, in exchange for the half of the Lordship of Wolgast that John I had received as dowry from King Valdemar II of Denmark when he married his first wife, Sophia. This treaty is considered the birth of the Uckermark as a part of Brandenburg. Policies to stabilize the Neumark. During the first third of the 13th century, German settlers were recruited by Duke Leszek I the White to settle the Neumark. After he died in 1227, the Polish central government collapsed, allowing the Margraves of Brandenburg to expand eastwards. They acquired land east of the Oder and expanded their domain further east to the River Drau and north to the River Pasonte. In 1257, John I founded the town of Landsberg as an alternative river crossing across the Warta, competing with the crossing in the Polish town of Santok, detracting from the considerable revenues Santok made from foreign trade, similar to the way Berlin had been founded to compete with Köpenick. In 1261, the Margraves purchased Meislebors from the Knights Templar and began developing the town to their power center in the Neumark. To stabilize the new possessions, the Margraves used the tried and tested Ascanian policy of founding monasteries and settlements. As early as 1230, they supported the Polish Count Dionysius Bronicius when he founded the Cistercian Paradies Monastery near Miedzieszek as affiliation of the monastery at Lehnen. The cooperation with the Polish Count provided border security against Pomerania and prepared the economy of the area for integration into the Neumark. Among the settlers in the Neumark was the von Sydow family, who were later ennobled. The small town of Sidinia was in fief to the noble von Jagow family. The historian Stefan Warnach has summarized this development and the attempts of the Ascanians to gain access to the Baltic Sea from the Middle Oder and the Uckermark as follows. The great success of their territorial expansion in the 13th century was largely due to the great-grandsons of Albert the Bear. The design of the reign reached much further spatially and conceptually than that of the predecessors. According to Lutz Partenheimer, the Ascanians had pushed back the competitors from Magdeburg, Wettin, Mecklenburg, Pomerania, Poland and the smaller competitors on all fronts. However, John I and Otto III failed to produce the strategically important connection to the Baltic Sea. Development in the Berlin area. The development of the Berlin area is closely related to the other policies of the two Margraves. The two founding cities of Berlin were founded relatively late. The settlements began around 1170 and achieved city status around 1240. Other settlement in the area, such as Spandau and Köpenick, date back to the Slavic period, and these naturally had a greater strategic and political importance than the young merchant towns Cölln and Berlin. For a long time the border between the territories of the Slavic tribes Heveli and Spruinen crossed straight through the area of today's Berlin. Around 1130, Spandau was an eastern outpost of the Heveli under Pribislav. When Pribislav died in 1150, Spandau fell to Brandenburg under the terms of an inheritance treaty between Pribislav and Albert the Bear. Brandenburg did not acquire Köpenick until 1245. Residents at Spandau in 1229, the Margraves of Brandenburg lost a battle against the former guardian, the Archbishop of Magdeburg at the Plauersee, close to the residents in Brandenburg and Der Havel. They escaped to the fortress at Spandau. In the following years, the brothers made Spandau the preferred residence, next to Tangermund in the Altmark. Between 1232 and 1266, 17 stays at Spandau have been documented, more than at any other town. Albert the Bear probably expanded the fortress island at Spandau eastwards before shortly after his victory against a certain Jaxa in 1157. Towards the end of the 12th century, the Ascanians moved the fortress about a kilometer to the north, to the location of today's Spandau citadel, probably because of a rising groundwater table. The presence of an Ascanian fortress on this site in 1197 has been established. John I and Otto III expanded the fortress and promoted the civitas in the adjacent settlement. They gave it city rights in 1232 or earlier. They founded the Benedictine nunnery of St. Mary in 1239. The Nonnendammli, one of the oldest streets in Berlin and as Nonnendam part of a trade route as early as the 13th century, is still a reminder of the former nunnery. Expansion of Cölln and Berlin. According to the current state of research, no evidence has been found that of Slavic settlement existed in the area around the twin towns of Berlin and Cölln. The ford across the largely swampy Berlin glacial valley gained importance during the Slavic-German transition period, when John I and Otto III settled the sparsely populated plateaus of Teltow and Barnim with local Slavs and German immigrants. According to Adrian von Müller, the strategic importance of Cölln, Berlin, and the reason for the foundation was probably to form a counterweight to Köpenick, a secure trading hub held by the Wettins with its own trade routes to the north and east. The broad ford across 2 or even 3 river arms away could best be protected by fortified settlements on both river banks. The Margraves protected the route to Halle across the northwestern Teltow Plateau by a chain of Templar villages: Marienfelde, Mariendorf, Rixdorf and Tempelhof. After the Ascanians defeated the Wettins in the Teltow War of 1245, the importance of Köpenick decreased. took an increasingly central position in the developing trading network. According to Winfried Schitsch, we can assume the Berlin and Cölln owe the development as urban settlements to the structural changes in this area due to the expansion during the High Middle Ages, which led both to a denser population and a reorganization of long-distance trade routes. The diluvial plateaus of Teltow and Barnim, with the heavy and relatively fertile soils, were systematically settled and put under the plough during the reign of Margraves John I and Otto III. During the first phase of settlement, the lowland areas along the river with the lighter soils seem to have been the preferred places of settlement. According to the Chronica Martianum Brandenburgensium of 1280, Berlin and other places were built by John I and Otto III. Since the reign had started in 1225, the period around 1230 is considered the founding period of Berlin. Recent archaeological research has uncovered evidence of late 12th century market towns in both Cölln and Berlin. 90 graves were excavated in the St. Nicholas Church, the oldest building in Berlin, with foundations dated 1220 to 1230, and some of these graves could also be from the late 12th century. This implies that the two Margraves did not actually found the cities of Cölln and Berlin, although they did play a decisive role in the early expansion of the cities. Among the privileges granted to the two cities by the Margraves were Brandenburg law and in particular the staple right, which gave Cölln and Berlin an economic advantage of Spandau and Köpenick. The Margraves gave the Mirica, the Cölln Moor, with all usage rights to the citizens of Cölln. The connection of the Margraves with Berlin is also evidenced by their choice of Hermann von Langele as the confessor. This Hermann von Langele was the first known member of the Franciscan convent at Berlin. He is mentioned as a witness in a deed issued by the Margrave in Spandau in 1257. Inheritance and Descendants. The joint rule of the Margraves ended in 1258 with a division of the territory. A cleverly managed division and continued consensual policy prevented the Margraviate from falling apart. The preparations for the reorganization may have begun in 1250, when the Uckermark was acquired, but no later than 1255, when John I married Jutta, the daughter of Duke Albert I of Saxony-Wittenberg. Johannine and Ottonian line, Koran Abbey, gravelaying and power politics. The politics of marriage and 1258 consummated division of the state government led to the joint foundation of the monastery of Mariense on a former island in the Pasteiner Sea Lake on the northeastern edge of today's Barnim. Until then, deceased Margraves of Brandenburg had been buried at Lehnen Abbey, in the Ottonian part of the Margraviate. The monastery of Mariense was meant to provide the Johannine line with a burial place of their own. Construction of the monastery began in 1258 with monks from Lehnen. Even before Mariense was completed in 1273, a decision was made to move to a new location approximately 5 miles to the southwest with the new name Koran Abbey. When John I died in 1266, he was initially buried at Mariense. In 1273, his body was moved to Koran Abbey. It appears that in 1266, John I arranged for the monastery to move and that he donated rich gifts to the new Koran Abbey, including the village of Pastein. His sons later confirmed these donations for the benefit of the father's soul and their own. As with all monastery founded by the Ascanians, political and economic considerations played an important role, alongside the pastoral aspects. A Slavic circular rampart existed on the island to the west of the monastery. John I and Otto III probably used this rampart as a castle against the Pomeranian competitors. The monastery was meant to provide central and administrative functions. Both the foundation itself and the location in a regional center across the trade route in a populated area are to be interpreted as the result of political calculations dividing the Margraviate. When the Margraviate was divided, John I received Stendal and the Altmark, which was considered the cradle of Brandenburg, and would remain apart until 1806. He also received the Havelland and the Uckermark. His brother Otto III received Spandau, Salzwedel, Barnim, the Lubusz Land and Stargard. The most important factors in this division were revenue and the number of vassals. Geographical factors played only a subordinate role. The successors as Margraves of Brandenburg, Otto IV with the arrow, Valdemar the Great, and Henry II the Child, all stem from the Johannine line. Otto's sons and grandsons and John's younger sons also styled themselves Margrave of Brandenburg, and as such co-signed official document. For example, John's sons John II and Conrad signed in 1273 the decision to move Mariense monastery to Corinth. However, they remained co-regents. The Ottonian line died out in 1317 with the death of Margrave John V in Spandau, so that Brandenburg was reunited under Valdemar the Great. The Johannine line died out only 3 years later, with the death of Henry the Child in 1320, ending Ascanian rule in Brandenburg. In 1290, 19 Margraves of the two lines had gathered on a hill near Rathenau. In 1318 only 2 Margraves were left alive, Valdemar and Henry the Child. The last Ascanian in Brandenburg, the 11-year-old Henry the Child, only played a minor role and was already at the mercy of the various houses trying to grab power in the upcoming power vacuum. Marriage and issue. In 1230, John I married Sophia, daughter of King Valdemar II of Denmark and Berengaria of Portugal. With her, he had the following children: John II Manu 1281, Margrave of Brandenburg as co-ruler; Otto IV with the arrow, Margrave of Brandenburg; Eric, Archbishop of Magdeburg 1283–1295; Conrad I, Margrave of Brandenburg as co-regent, father of the last Ascanian Margrave of Brandenburg, Valdemar. Helen, married in 1258 with Margrave Dietrich of Landsberg. Hermann, from 1290 Bishop of Heidelberg. In 1255, John I married Bridget Jutta, the daughter of Duke Albert I of Saxony and Agnes of Austria. With her, he had the following children: Agnes, married in 1273 to King Eric V of Denmark, and secondly in 1293 Count Gerhard II of Holstein-Plön; Henry I Lackland, Margrave of Landsberg; Matilda, married to Duke Bogislaw Ivy of Pomerania. Albert. John I held King Eric V of Denmark prisoner from 1261 to 1264. In 1273, Eric married John's daughter Agnes. After John's death in 1266, his brother Otto III ruled Brandenburg alone. After Otto's death in 1267, John's son, Otto IV, took over as the senior Margrave. Double statue of the brothers at the Siegesallee. The double statue depicted on the left stood in the Siegesallee in the Grosse Tiergarten in Berlin. The Siegesallee was a grand boulevard commissioned by Emperor Wilhelm II in 1895 with statues illustrating the history of Brandenburg and Prussia. Between 1895 and 1901, 27 sculptors led by Reinhold Begas created depicted 32 statues of Prussian and Brandenburg rulers, each 2.75 high. Each statue was flanked by two smaller busts representing people who had played an important role in the life of the historic ruler. The central statue in Group 5 was the double statue of John and Otto. On the left was a bust of Provost Simeon of Cölln, who was a witness on the 28th of October 1237, together with Bishop Gernon of Brandenburg, of the oldest deed in which Cölln is mentioned. On the right was a bust of Marsilius de Berlin, the first recorded mayor of Berlin. He was simultaneously mayor of Cölln. The choice of the secular and ecclesiastical leaders of Berlin and Cölln as flanking characters for John and Otto underscores the pivotal role the city of Berlin played in the lives of the Margraves in the opinion of Reinhold Koser, the historian who did the research for the Siege of Italy. Koser regarded the founding and development of the city as the Margraves' most important policy, more so than the expansion of the principality and the founding of the monastery. He was also impressed by the consensus which characterized the joint rule, as presented in the Chronicle of 1280. According to Koser, the sculptor Max Baumbach was responsible for the decision to make the founding of Berlin the central theme of the double statue, rather than the expansion of the founding of the monastery. John I depicted sitting on a stone, with the city charter of Berlin and Cölln spread across his knees. The younger Otto III stand beside him, pointing to the deed with one hand, while his other arm rests on a spear. The outstretched arms and bowed head suggest the brothers' protection and promotion of the twin cities. The fact that the two young men are depicted as mature men was seen by Koser as legitimized by the right of artistic freedom. Two adolescents would not have been able to adequately express the founding of a future world city. For the perspective of the late 19th century interpretation of history, the overall architecture of the statue group maintains a romanticistic style. According to Oder.They, the two eagles show characteristics of the Jugendstil ancestry.